Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these swing earrings, and basically what it is an embellishment to add to whatever earrings that you have you want to wear it with. So the piece itself looks like this, and then you have whatever earring you want to pair it with. Put this through your ear like you normally would, put this from the back onto it, and then add your lock there just like normal, and then this will sit underneath your earlobe where you have your normal earring in your hole, obviously. So this is what it looks like. So if you want to learn how to make one of these, then keep watching. So these are the things that we'll need. Now first off, the wire that I'm using here, I'm using two different gauges, and the first one is a 0.8mm, and this is going to be the base wire, and then up here I'm using a 0.4mm, and I'm going to use this wire to attach my beads with. And the beads that I'm using are these, and these are some purple rondelles with a nice sparkle to them, and they measure 3 by 4mm. Now you don't have to use these beads specifically, you can use other shapes like rounds for example, just as long as the beads you're using are on the small side. And then the final thing I have here is just a pair of finished earrings that I'm going to use this embellishment for, but this embellishment that we're making is going to be interchangeable. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So what we need to do is cut our wire, and what I have here is a length of about 10 centimeters, and it's the 0.8mm wire that we're using, and this is all we need really because it's just a small piece that we're making, and this is just for one earring as well, so if you want to make two you need to make another length of this. So what we need to do first is we need to make some loops that's going to sit on the back of the ear, so it's also adjustable for that reason. And what I'm going to use for this is my 6-step bell making pliers. Now you can also use round nose pliers, that's fine. I just prefer to use this so I make sure I get the loops in the same size throughout. So I'm going to use the second smallest on this one, and if you don't have these and you would like them, I'm going to put a link in the description box so where you can buy them. But otherwise it's fine to use your round nose pliers. So I'm going to place these at about the middle of the wire, and remember I'm using the second smallest, and then I'm going to fold my wires over so they're crossing over on the other side here, just like this. So you take it out, you have a little circle, and then we need to make another one, so I'm going to swap it over so the smallest end just goes through the circle we just made, so on the other end there that's underneath, we're ready to use that to make the same size loop right underneath. Now what I like to do is, in this case, the one coming from this side crossed in front of the other one, and the one from the other side here crossed behind. So I want to do the same thing. So basically the one that was behind in the previous loop now goes in front, and the one that was in front goes behind. I just find that it gets a bit more sturdy that way. So just like that. So we now have our two loops here, and they're perfectly the same size, and like I said, it crosses the front towards the back, and then the other side, the back, and then the front. So that's the first step now. So now we have the loops ready here, and those are the ones that are going to sit on the back of your ear and attach to your earring. You can make more than the two if you need to. It all depends what kind of space you have behind your ear. So what we need to do now is just cut these lengths down a little bit because they're a bit too long. So to do that I'm going to get my flush cutters here, or wire cutters, whichever you have. And then this is a bit of a judgment call really, because how long you make these legs will determine how wide it will be on your ear. So I usually say maybe about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters on each side, or you can easily make it smaller or longer. It's completely up to you. So cut that and get roughly the same on the other side. You can always measure if you feel more comfortable with that. Like that. So we've cut them down, and you can always see if they're not quite the same, just cut off a bit extra, just like that. So now the legs that we're going to attach the beads to are the right length. So what we need to do now is just make a loop on each end of these legs to act as a bit of a stopper, otherwise your beads and your wire will just slip off of it. So I'm going to take my flat nose pliers here, flat nose or chain nose, whichever, and then go in a little bit, so roughly like this. So on this side, just before you're going to make the bend, because we're just going to make a bit of an angle first, that's basically roughly the length, and then just added the little loop as well that the bottom of the earring here is going to be. So I place my pliers and then bend it upwards so it sits like this. So upwards in the same direction that the loops are. And we need to do that on both sides, roughly in the same place. Just as precise as you can get. It doesn't have to be perfect. So just like this. And then I'm going to use those little ends that we stuck up now, to make the loop. So what I'm going to get is my round nose pliers, and I like to try and make this loop as small as I can, just because, so it doesn't stand out too much really, and the beads will kind of end up hiding it. So I'm going to get my round nose pliers and then make the loop so it comes down this direction. So just use your round nose pliers and roll it down. And like I said, this loop doesn't have to be perfect really, because hopefully we'll be hiding it with the beads. And like I said, I like to get it as small as I can. And just straighten it out if you need to with your flat nose pliers. And then because it's a loop like this, what you need to make sure of is that that little opening where the wire comes back on itself, you need to make sure that that's completely closed. And I just use my flat nose for that, kind of squeeze it in towards itself to make sure that that is completely closed. And once you're happy with that, you want to do the same thing on the other side. So make another loop here. Roll it down. Just the exact same thing. Make sure it's nice and tight, completely closed. So your 0.4mm wire won't be able to slip out of there, because I'm going to use the loop as well to kind of secure that in place. So just like this, and there we have the base for it. And you can always adjust the shape of it a little bit, but we can also do that after we add the beads, because again, people's ears have different shapes and that, so it might fit you differently. So then we need to attach the beads now, and this is where we need to get out a 0.4mm wire. So I've just cut off a length of this. It doesn't need to be very long, because it's just a very little space here that we're working with, just enough for you to work with really as well. So if you feel comfortable with something about 30 centimeters or so, then that's fine. And then what I'm going to start with is in one end here, I'm going to put it through the loop, just to begin with, and just have a little tail just to be able to hold on to there. So like that, and then come back through the loop again, in the other direction. So we're basically looping a 0.4mm wire here through the loop to fasten it before we start adding the beads. And then you can do this once or twice, depending also how big your loop is, if you've got space. And just depending how secure you want it to be. I'm just looping around again. So just like that. So that's nice and secure now. And then now it's coming out of the back here. There isn't really a front and a back yet, but there will be now that we start adding in the beads. So you need to just decide that. So I'm going to come around to the bottom of the earring now, and I'm going to add in my first bead. Don't worry too much about the tail yet. I'm not going to cut them off until the very end. So we're going to grab a first bead, put that on your 0.4mm wire, and this can be a tiny little bit fiddly because it's quite small what we're working with, but just take your time. And then because these are rondelles, and it's kind of the same principle if you're using rounds, what I want is you have a hole going through your bead from one side to the other obviously, and I don't want one of those holes kind of sticking out. What I want is the very side of the bead to be pointing forward. So it's going to sit like this, so that you can't see the wire here on the front of it. That's how I want it to sit. And then I wrap around with the 0.4mm there. When I'm happy how the bead sits, I wrap around about 3 times or so. Also depends what beads you're using, the size of them. Just to give it space in between the first one here and then the next bead. So wrapped around a few times, about 3. I'm going to add in my next bead. And then do exactly the same thing, coming from the bottom, wrapping around, making sure that the side of the bead is facing forward. So just like that. And you can always take your time just to make sure it sits right. So it sits just how you want it to, until you're happy with it. And it will kind of want to move around on you, but just try and keep hold of it. And you can always, if it moves too much, while you're working with it, you can adjust it a little bit at the end as well. So keep wrapping around a couple of times again. So you can see them moving a little bit, but once you've gotten them all in place, they will stay in place more. The next one. And just keep moving it around as well, how you feel comfortable working with it. Adding in the next bead. Now here, it'll fit perfectly. What I'm going to need to do is actually go through the very bottom loop there. It will also secure the base wires more in place then. So the whole thing will become a bit stronger. But we obviously need to come across the middle of our piece as well here. So the next bead. And then a couple of times here, we'll need to go through that middle, through that whole bottom loop there. When we're wrapping around with just the wire, just doing the same thing. Go around about 3 times or so before you add in the next bead. And obviously how many beads you're going to need to add depends on, first of all, the size of your earring, how wide you want it to be or narrow, but also what materials that you're using. So if you're using some smaller beads, you'll probably need more. If you're using some larger or maybe a different shape beads, you might need less. So that's all dependent on your piece. Add in the next one, make sure it sits correctly, and then wrap around a few times. Like so. Have a look at it as you go, see if you're happy. And the next bead, we're getting towards the end now. And again, we're now wrapping around normally because we're not in that loop anymore. So just like this, and we're getting almost to the loop on the end here. And that's going to be the very last bead that's going to be covering that. Just like the first one covered the first loop. So get your last bead. And have that basically sit across that loop. And then what we need to do is, because there isn't really much more to wrap around now because we're right at the end of the wire. So what we need to do is finish it off. And this is just a little bit fiddly, you just need to, because obviously you kind of covered that loop with your bead. But just if you can find a space to actually get your wire through that loop. So just try and poke it in behind your bead there. Because we're going to secure it off just like we kind of attached it in the beginning. So that was the wrong way. You actually need to come from the back there. And come up through the loop. Like that. So it's basically going to be the same as the beginning. We're using this loop to secure the wire in place. But at the same time having the bead cover it from the front. And again, wrap around a couple of times until you feel like it's nice and secure. Just as much as you can get through. Like that. And nice and tight, like this. And this is basically all your beads attached now. You can just adjust them a little bit. All that's left to do now is get rid of these wire ends. So for this, all there is to do, we have basically secured the ends in place there. So what we just need to do is make sure we cut it off and then be able to tuck in the end so it doesn't stick out and be able to catch or scratch in your earlobe or anything. So just cut it off as close as you can. Ideally, if you can cut it so the end of the wire will be in between the loop and your bead there, that'll be ideal. And then if there's anything sticking out, just take your chain nose pliers or something and just try and tuck that in. And then if you run your fingers over it and you can't feel anything anywhere, then that's going to be fine. You won't be able to feel it on your ear as well. The other side the same. Cut it off in between if you can. And then if necessary, tuck it in. So just like that. And that is basically finished now. And then obviously all there's left to do, if you need to, you can then shape the bottom part here a bit more, depending how your ear curves. If you need to, you can curve them up a little bit more. That's completely to fit your ear. But that's how it looks then. So really simple and easy to make, and quite quick as well. So all you do now is take your earring of your choice, and then this will obviously go through your ear first, and then behind your ear you'll put this on. That's also the good thing if you have multiple loops here, it's kind of adjustable. So depending how much length you have behind your ear, put that on, and then put on your backing to your earring there. So just like this. And then it'll sit just nicely underneath your earlobe. So a nice little swing earring. A bit extra embellishment to your earring. So that's how you make this. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make a little Easter design, and this is a wirework ring with some bunny ears on it, and they look like this. And here I just have two versions of it, but it's the same basic principle. This is just where you have both ears sticking up like this, and then it'll sit like this on your hand, your finger. Really cute. Perfect for Easter. And this one, I just flicked one of the ears a little bit to give it a little